She said it on a Tuesday, 3 weeks before the party that ended everything. She was on the phone in the kitchen, and she didn't hear me come in through the back door. And I stood in the hallway with my briefcase still in my hand and listened to my wife say the words that I have never been able to unhear since. "He's not the kind of man you have to worry about, Finn. Tom doesn't fight. He just goes quiet and disappears. Always has." She laughed after she said it. Light and easy. The way you laugh about something you believe so completely it doesn't even feel like cruelty anymore. I stood in that hallway for 11 seconds. I counted them. Then I set my briefcase down against the wall, turned around, and walked back out the front door without making a sound. I sat in my car in the driveway for 6 minutes. I looked at the house. Our house. The one I designed the renovation plans for on graph paper before we could afford an architect's software. The one I repainted by hand this summer. She said the gray was making her sad. I thought about my father. I was 12 years old the first time I understood what it looked like to love someone who was already gone. My father used to come home from work every evening and kiss my mother on the cheek before he'd even put down his keys. The left cheek. Always the left. I thought that was just how love worked, that you picked a side and you stayed faithful to it. It took me 3 months of watching and saying nothing to understand that she had already left, not the house, but the marriage. She was still sleeping in the same bed and eating breakfast at the same table and kissing him back on that same left cheek, and she had already gone somewhere he could not follow. He found out from a phone bill. Not from her. Not from a conversation. From a piece of paper that told the truth when no person in that house was willing to. He went quiet after that. The way she told Finn I go quiet. Like it was a flaw. Like silence was weakness. My father died 4 years later. The doctors said cardiac. I always called it something else. My name is Tom King. I am 35 years old. I'm an architect. I design structures that are built to last, foundations that don't shift, frameworks that don't bend, load-bearing walls that hold the weight of everything placed on top of them. I have spent my entire adult life building things that stand. And I am here to tell you exactly how I watched my wife and my neighbor burn down 14 months of lies in 11 minutes at a neighborhood party, while I stood in the garden and said absolutely nothing. Because she was right about one thing. I don't fight. I build. The moving truck showed up on a Sunday afternoon 14 months ago, and I was in the front yard pulling weeds when it rolled past, so I saw him before Mary did. That matters. I want you to understand that I saw him first, because everything that comes after only makes sense if you know that from the beginning I was paying attention. He stepped out of the driver's side in a navy linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up and that particular kind of tan that only comes from a life lived mostly outdoors or mostly wealthy. And he looked up and down Crestwood Lane the way a man looks at something he's just bought. Not curious. Satisfied. Then his eyes found me, and he walked across the lawn with his hand already extended, the greeting of a man who has never once in his life worried about whether he'd be well received. Finn Waller. Just moved in. I pulled off my garden glove and shook his hand. 1 second. 2. 3. The handshake kept going, and his eyes went somewhere past my shoulder, and I knew without turning around that Mary had come out of the house because I heard the front door and I heard her voice say something soft and welcoming the way she does when she wants someone to feel at home. His grip on my hand released, but his eyes didn't come back to me for another 4 seconds. 4 full seconds of looking at my wife before he remembered I was there. I filed it. The way I file everything. Quietly. Without expression. A habit I developed when I was 28 years old and my business partner was stealing my architectural designs and selling them for money I never saw, and I didn't know it yet because I trusted him. And by the time I understood what was happening, I had no documentation, no proof, nothing but my word against his and his lawyer against my silence. I lost. I lost badly. I spent 14 months after that eating gas station sandwiches on an AIM mattress in a studio apartment, teaching myself contract law at night with library books, swearing to myself that I would never again be the man in the room who wasn't paying attention. So I pay attention now. To everything. I paid attention 9 months ago at the Block Association meeting when the group shuffled and Finn ended up beside Mary and said something quiet and just for her, and she laughed. Not a polite laugh, not a neighbor laugh, but the laugh from the first year of our marriage that I hadn't heard in 8 months. I paid attention 5 months ago when I stepped 6 inches to the left during a driveway handshake to block his sight line to our front window, and watched his eyes shift automatically to find her before he caught himself. I paid attention 2 months ago at the 4th of July gathering when his hand touched her forearm for just a moment too long, and she didn't pull away. For handshakes. For moments. 14 months of folders inside a locked notes app on my phone labeled Invoices 2023. The morning of the party, I stood at the bathroom mirror shaving, and I let all 4 of them play back like a film I already knew the ending of. Not because I needed to remind myself, because I needed to feel the full weight of what I already knew before I walked into that house and watched it happen live. Mary called up from downstairs, her voice bright and completely normal. "Tom, party's at 7. Okay? Don't work late." I looked at my reflection for a long moment. "You already know," I said. Just to myself. Just to the man in the mirror who had been carrying all of this in silence for over a year. "You just need to decide what you're going to do about it." I turned off the light, went downstairs, made coffee for 2, and waited for the evening to come. She started getting ready at 4 o'clock. I know because I was at my desk reviewing blueprints for a commercial project when I heard the bathroom door close and the shower run, and I looked at the clock on my screen and noted it the way I note everything: time, detail, pattern. And then I went back to my blueprints and told myself it meant nothing. People shower before parties. That's normal. That's just a thing people do. But the shower ran for 40 minutes. And then there was the first outfit. I heard the closet open and close. Open and close. The soft sound of hangers moving, which in 14 months of marriage I had come to understand meant she hadn't found what she was looking for yet. Then the second outfit. Then the third. I sat at my desk and listened to my wife dress and undress for a neighborhood party 2 doors down from our house, a party we could walk to in under a minute, and I counted the outfit changes the way my father used to count the miles on the car he never drove. 3 changes. 2 hours and 40 minutes. I already knew about the perfume before I saw it. 6 months ago, I noticed a bottle pushed to the very back of her vanity behind her everyday things. Dark glass, no label visible from the front. The kind of bottle that looks like it was chosen deliberately rather than picked up at a department store counter. I'd never smelled it on her. Not once in 4 years of marriage had she worn it around me. I filed that too and said nothing and waited, and now here we were, the evening of the party, and when she finally came down the stairs I could smell it from across the living room. She looked extraordinary. That's the truth, and I won't soften it. She was wearing a dress I hadn't seen before, deep green, and her hair was done the careful way she only does it when presentation matters to her, and she stood at the bottom of the stairs and asked me if she looked okay in the slightly performative way people ask when they already know the answer and just want to hear it confirmed. I looked at her the way I look at a set of plans when I'm checking for structural inconsistencies. Thorough, quiet, looking not just at what's there but at what the details are telling me. "You look perfect," I said. I meant it as a diagnosis. In the car, she checked her phone twice and tilted the screen away from me both times, and I drove and said nothing and watched the road and thought about a conversation I'd had with Marcus Webb 3 days earlier. Marcus had been on a month-to-month retainer with me for 6 months, $1,200 a month, a private investigator I hired quietly after the Thursday pattern started, the weeks of client consultations that ran 3 hours too long and produced a client whose name Mary changed the subject to avoid. I hadn't asked Marcus for anything specific yet. I'd just been paying to have him available, the way you keep a good tool close before you know exactly which problem you're going to need it for. 3 days before the party, I called him and said, "Saturday, I need you new by." He asked me what I expected to happen. I told him I didn't expect anything. I just intended to watch. Mary laughed at something on her phone and turned toward the window, and the evening light caught the side of her face, and for just a moment, one unguarded moment I'll never fully explain, I saw the woman I married. Not the one angling her screen away from me in the passenger seat. The one who used to fall asleep with her head on my shoulder watching films she'd already seen twice. The one who cried at the hospital when my appendix came out at 2 in the morning. Not because it was serious, but because she said she couldn't stand the idea of me hurting. I parked the car. We walked toward Finn's house, and my hand found the small of her back the way it always has, the automatic tenderness of 4 years of marriage, and I felt her body stiffen. Just slightly, just for a half second, the involuntary tightening of a person bracing for something they're not ready for yet. I filed it. We reached the door. I smiled. Finn opened the door before we knocked. That's the first thing I noticed. He was already there, already watching, already waiting in the particular way of a man who knew exactly who was about to arrive. His eyes went to Mary first. They always did. But tonight there was no pretense in it, no performance of neighborly greeting stretched over something else. It was just direct and immediate and completely unguarded, the look of a man on his own property who no longer feels the need to hide what he wants. He touched the small of her back in exactly the same place I'd just touched it. She didn't stiffen. I shook his hand, fourth time, last time, and moved toward the bar because I needed 30 seconds alone with my own face before I had to give it back to the room. The bartender was young, maybe 23, the easy confidence of someone who works private parties and has learned to disappear while witnessing everything. He looked at me and said, "The usual." I had never been to one of Finn's parties before. I ordered a club soda. I didn't correct him. Instead, I asked, casual as weather, how often Finn threw these things. "Every few weeks," he said, "though usually it's smaller, like 6, 7 people." I nodded, sipped my club soda. My wife come to many of them. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then looked down at the bar with the careful stillness of someone who has just understood exactly which room he has walked into. That was all I needed. I picked up my glass and turned back to the party and smiled at the first neighbor who caught my eye. The folder was full. An hour in, I had worked the entire room, laughed at the right moments, asked about Dale Henderson's drainage project, admired Karen Cho's new patio furniture, performed the complete and convincing social theater of a man who belongs exactly where he is and has absolutely nothing on his mind. But my eyes never stopped moving. Every 4 minutes I found Mary. Every 4 minutes I confirmed her location, her proximity to Finn, the temperature between them. It was the same discipline I use on a construction site. You don't stare at the thing you're monitoring. You check it, log it, look away, check it again. You never let it know it's being watched. Then I looked over a neighbor's shoulder and stopped mid-sentence. Far corner of the garden, near the outdoor fireplace, partially behind a trellis of climbing roses that probably seemed private to them and was completely transparent to me from where I stood. Finn's arm was around Mary's waist. Not a friendly arm, not the arm of a neighbor being warm at his own party. A claiming arm, the kind that communicates ownership to anyone in the vicinity who speaks that language. Mary's head was tilted toward him. Finn's lips were at her and his thumb. I want you to understand how specific this detail is, because it's the detail that closed every remaining door in my mind. His thumb was moving, slowly, against the fabric of her dress at her hip. The unconscious, habitual tenderness of a man completely comfortable with what he's touching. I counted 11 minutes. They didn't look around once, because they believed I didn't know. I set my glass down on a nearby table, placed it carefully, with both hands, the way you set something down when you are choosing in real time between two versions of yourself. I chose the version that walks out. I turned, crossed the garden, past the bar, walked through the front door, got in my car, drove 2 houses down, went inside. I never said goodbye to anyone. The house was dark when I got home, and I didn't turn on a single light. I sat in the living room in the chair by the window with my phone face up on the coffee table, and I made 2 calls. The first was to Marcus Webb, 4 minutes. The second was to Sandra Osei, my attorney, the woman I'd been paying a quiet retainer for 2 years, not because I planned to divorce Mary, but because I learned at 28 years old that the most expensive mistakes are the ones you face without preparation. 3 minutes. Both calls ended the same way. "I'll be ready." And then the house was silent again, and I sat with that silence and let it be what it was. At 11:47 p.m. my phone buzzed. "Where are you?" "Everyone's asking about you, LOL. Did you leave?" I read it 3 times. Double question marks. Performance anxiety. LOL, she's minimizing. Everyone's asking. She needs to know how much I saw. Headache. Sorry. Stay and have fun. 17 seconds. Are you sure? I can come home if you want. I stayed at that for a long time. She wasn't offering because she was worried about me. She was offering because she needed to measure the size of what I knew. Stay. Enjoy the party. I put the phone face down. And then, for the first time since I left the garden, I pressed the heels of both hands against my eyes and held them there. Not crying. My father didn't cry either. He just went very, very still, and the stillness became something permanent in him, and 4 years later it killed him. I was not going to let it kill me. I had other plans. She came home at 1:30 a.m., moving carefully through the dark the way people move when they believe they are unobserved, and she slid into bed with the practiced gentleness of someone who has done this before. And I lay perfectly still with my eyes open and said nothing. She had showered at his house. I knew because her hair was damp and the perfume from the party was gone. But she'd missed something. A trace of his cologne on the collar of the robe she'd thrown on before bed. Deep, woody, expensive, the scent of a man who buys things to announce himself. I catalogued it without moving. She fell asleep in 4 minutes. I counted. For the next 2 hours I ran numbers. Not emotional mathematics, financial ones. I was mentally auditing 4 years of marriage with the same methodical precision I apply to a structural assessment. Joint accounts, the mortgage, the 2 car loans, the investment property we bought together in year 2, my business accounts, held inside a premarital LLC I established before we met, a structure Mary had always considered a boring administrative detail, the kind of thing she signed paperwork for without reading because she trusted me and because she had no reason then not to. She never understood that the LLC was the foundation, that everything I'd built since was inside it, that in the event of a dissolution, her legal claims stopped at the joint accounts and the car. She never understood that the LLC was the prenup she never knew she didn't get. By 3:30 a.m., I had the full blueprint. I closed my eyes, slept 4 hours, woke before her, made coffee. Monday morning I made her eggs. Her order exactly. 2 over easy, sourdough, the hot sauce she keeps on the left side of the second shelf because she says the placement matters to the ritual. I had it on the table before she came downstairs, and when she walked into the kitchen and saw it, her body did the thing it does when it encounters something it wasn't braced for. A small softening. A recalibration. She searched my face for damage and found none. Over breakfast, she told me about the party. An edited version, internally consistent, emotionally calibrated, the performance of a woman who has rehearsed the night on the drive home and again in the shower at his house and again lying in the dark beside me while she thought I was asleep. She was good at it. I want to be honest about that. She was genuinely skilled. I counted 6 lies in 9 minutes. I didn't flag a single one. I kissed her cheek when I left. The left one. Always the left. The same cheek my father kissed my mother on every evening until the phone bill told him the truth she never did. In the car, I called Marcus. I need everything. Start with the last 9 months. Thursdays first. Already have most of it, Tom. Send it to Sandra. A pause. Then, Tom, there's something else. The house Waller bought. I pulled the records. He moved in 14 months after something that happened in Portland. A woman named Rachel Cole. Her husband found out. Confronted Waller directly. I already knew this. I had been at the cookout where Finn's drunk friend told the story. I had been standing close enough to hear every word and far enough away that no one noticed I was listening. Waller faced 0 consequences, Marcus said. Send the Portland documentation to Sandra too. I said. Done. All of it. Wednesday evening, Mary was in the grocery store when her phone buzzed, and she smiled at it the way she hadn't smiled in our direction in 8 months. I know because Marcus sent me the intercept summary at 4:15 p.m. Legal. Approved by Sandra. 3 weeks of message logs and location data that mapped a relationship running on a parallel track to our marriage with the confidence of something that had never once been interrupted. Thursday, Marcus sat outside Lena's bistro in a rental car with a 200mm lens and the particular patience of a man who does this for a living. Finn and Mary arrived at 12:47 p.m. She was laughing before they reached the door. At 2:15 p.m. they came out and she straightened his jacket collar before he got in his car. The small, automatic intimacy of a woman completely comfortable with what she's touching. Marcus sent 43 photographs. I opened them at 3 p.m. at my desk. I looked at them once. Then I put my phone in my drawer and went back to my blueprints and began building the structure of what came next. 3 layers. Layer 1. Sandra files the divorce petition citing documented adultery. Mary walks away with a joint account and a car. The LLC holds everything else. Layer 2. Finn's $14 million development permit has 3 code inconsistencies I identified in 20 minutes of reviewing his application. I submit a formal complaint to the planning board. The review stalls. The bank invokes the delay clause. He loses $340,000 before a single foundation is poured. Layer 3. The Portland documentation goes to a journalist who has been building a profile on Finn for 8 months and needed a human story to anchor the financial one. I give her Rachel Cole. I give her 2 witnesses. I give her everything. I measure twice. I cut once. I build things that stand. 3 weeks after the party, I woke at 6, made coffee, filled her mug, the one with the chip in the handle that she's refused to throw away for 3 years because she says imperfect things have the best history, and set it on the counter next to the manila folder Sandra had couriered over the evening before. I put a post-it note on top of the folder. Tom King's handwriting, clean, architectural, the precise printing of a man who learned early that clarity prevents misunderstanding. Sandra Osei, 312-445-8801. She's expecting your call. That was all. No letter, no confrontation, no staging of a scene where she could perform remorse or manufacture an explanation or cry in the particular way that has always made me want to fix things. No moment for her to use the time I gave her to make sure I couldn't prove what I already had 43 photographs of. I left at 6:30 as usual. I heard later, from Sandra, that Mary called Finn in a panic within the hour. That Finn told her to calm down, said he'd call his lawyer, said I couldn't prove anything real. Then his phone buzzed with a Google alert. His name. He opened it. The article was already live. 14 months of a man going quiet. 3 weeks of a man building. One morning that ended both of their worlds before breakfast. 6 months later, I'm standing on the rooftop of a building in the city, a $22 million mixed-use residential tower the city fast-tracked partly because my firm's reputation grew on the back of the planning board work that killed Finn's permit, and the irony of that is not lost on me. It never is. I'm an architect. I understand that every structure stands on the foundation of something that came before it. My phone rings. Unknown number. I answer anyway. Her voice is smaller than I have ever heard it. All the brightness gone, all the performance stripped away. Just Mary's actual voice underneath everything she used it for. She asked me why I never confronted her, why I never gave her a chance to explain, why I left that night without saying a word. I look out at the city, at the steel and glass and concrete of buildings that will outlast every mistake made inside them. Because the last time I gave someone a chance to explain, I say, they used that time to make sure I couldn't prove anything. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. She is quiet for a long time. I hope you're okay, Mary, I say. I genuinely do. I hang up. I put the phone in my pocket. I pick up my blueprints. The wind moves across the rooftop and I let it, and somewhere below me the city moves through its ordinary Wednesday morning completely unaware that a man up here just finished building the last thing he needed to build. He was right about one thing. My father. He went quiet too. The difference is I knew what to do with the silence.